Now, we have all, I'm sure, at some point in our lives been touched by war. You have either been a veteran yourself, or you know someone who was a veteran or is a serving military member. War is just, and the military is just something, a part of our daily lives. My dad served in World War II on a PT boat in the South Pacific, and my son served in the war in Afghanistan. I have a nephew that served in the Persian Gulf War. We're just all touched by war. And war is nothing new. War is going on right now as we speak. We sort of cast it out of our mind, but it's taking place. The most prominent, of course, is the war in the Ukraine, but there's also a war going on in the Sudan. Have you ever heard of that place? There's a war going on in the Sudan, and since May the 1st, there's been about 5,000 casualties. So war just goes on, and it's a sign of the times, of course, that Jesus said you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. But we want to cast that off, and I think we cast it off because there are horrors in war and people suffer greatly because of it. But I want you to understand that war is not something that's going off in a foreign land. War is something that's going on right here, right now, in this place. Now, we don't have any weapons of war as far as carnal weapons going on, and nobody's in danger right now of being wounded or killed because of this war. But it's nonetheless a real war. And I want you to register that fact in your life so that you are always aware and constantly perceptive of the fact that you are in a spiritual battle, and it's an assault on your lives by the evil one. The devil is real, though you don't hear much about him. And these that are mentioned here, these principalities, these powers, these rulers of darkness of this world against spiritual wickedness in high places, all those things are not something from fantasy land. It's not something that Hollywood has made up. It's not something that J.K. Rowling wrote in a book. This is real, and it's taking place right now. Now, I know for a good deal of Christians, and maybe many of you hear the metaphor of spiritual warfare is not something that you think about very often, but you should think about it, and that's the reason today I'm going to bring it to your attention so you will think about it more, and it will be constantly on your mind, particularly in these days as we see about us that no doubt in my mind, maybe you don't have that conclusion, free country, but no doubt in my mind we're in the last days. And things are not going to get better. They're going to get worse before they get better. Now, eventually they're going to get better. But right now, things are turning for worse. And the Bible says here, that there is set for you particularly, look at verse 13, look at that phrase, look at that, mark it, the evil day. The evil day. I'll clue you in on this. The devil has a destruction plan set for you, a blueprint for you. Say, I'm not that important. Absolutely, you're that important. You're a child of God. You're children of light. You're the light of the world. And the more light that he can put out, the more light that he can dim. You understand this is a warfare. And in a warfare, your enemy wants to destroy you. You're the foot soldiers. You're the infantry. You're the one he wants to kill. And so he sets out a blueprint for you so that when that evil day comes, when everything is fixed, when everything is set, then the ambush can come. And the Bible says we have a responsibility to do, and that is to stand in that evil day. Sometime maybe things have been going well for you. You look around your life, and if you were to make some determination of your life, you might say, things are pretty up on the up and up. I mean, it's not perfect, but whose life is perfect? But the family's well, and the health is good, and the marriage is in good shape, and all that is set up for you, and you look at that, and you thank God for that. But I'm here to warn you, there's an ambush coming. And an ambush is so set up in military terms, it's not an effective ambush if you can see it coming. That's not an ambush. That's an assault, but that's not an ambush. An ambush is when you're walking through life and then all of a sudden from every direction you are hit, not with carnal warfare, but spiritual weapons and attacks from the devil. And we can learn from the Bible how that happens. And we know who the suspect is when it comes our way. So in comes the evil one. And he plays his tricks on us. And it's tricks and strategies that have worked since the beginning of time when he first dealt with Adam and Eve. And he dealt with Job, and he's not changed his strategy at all. So what he'll do, for example, is he'll set a husband against a wife, and he will plant some ideas or thoughts and don't think he's not capable, because he is. He's a spiritual being just like God. And he will fill your mind with doubt. He will trouble your mind. The Bible calls it being shaken in mind. And that hint of doubt comes in. And then pretty soon, some drops of evidence come along, and they may be absolutely untrue. But that doesn't matter. The devil doesn't play by truth. He'll give you half-truths. And then he'll continue to assault you. And that drives a wedge between the loving relationship between two people. And they grow distant and they grow far apart. And he'll drive that wedge deeper and deeper and deeper. And when that happens, he just goes in the shadows and he laughs. He's already begun his work. He doesn't have to do much more, in fact, because we are of such people who are in the flesh and more at times carnally minded than spiritually minded, and he just watches the show. And pretty soon you have a family in wreck. Have you ever stood on the ash heap of a relationship and look around you and go, what happened? I don't get this. Have you ever had a conversation with someone? I'm going to get real close with you today, okay? I'm going to enter your living room. I'm coming to your house. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and the conversation is going well, and then all of a sudden it turns on a dime, and out of the blue something happens and the conversation goes south, and you're in an argument and you look back and go, what happened? I don't understand this. Has that ever happened to you people, or am I the only one? Well, okay, maybe I'm a weirdo. So the evil day comes. And it may be that you finally yield to that sexual passion that's been, you as a young man have those hormones, and you've been resisting and you've been fighting, and you finally give in. You say, okay, one time won't hurt. And all of a sudden you have an unwanted pregnancy. And the devil goes, boy, I've got you fixed now. What are you going to do now? You know from biology, young people, don't you? I'm not telling you anything your parents haven't told you. All it takes is one time. So I'm taking protections. Okay. All it takes is one time. Am I embarrassing you? I'm trying to tell you, you better be careful. And you better watch out. Because the devil will come in and he will wreck your lives. How many young women have had their lives wrecked because of an unwanted pregnancy? It happens all the time. We are precariously on the precipice of unexplained, mysterious suffering at any moment of any time. That's why the Bible tells you, watch and be sober. You can't afford. Let those that sleep in the night, and let those that be drunken in the night. But you watch and you be sober. So life is a warfare, and you have to be aware of it. Evil forces seek to invade you in your mind, in your interpersonal world, in your life. And the purpose of the devil is to cause you to sin. We do pretty good on that on our own, but he tempts us. And the whole purpose, the whole scheme is to destroy us. I'm just going to give a piece of advice just off the cuff. This is just off the cuff, okay? Just a piece of advice. If you're going to have a serious conversation with someone over something that really matters, then don't text. Don't text. If you need a list of things from the grocery store, okay. If you're going to be a little late to be home, okay. But if you're having some interpersonal conflict, don't text it. Face to face. Face to face. Because that dumb machine, what you do when you read it, I'm a psychologist, when you read that, you read your own emotions into it. And you can read what another person's writing that is totally innocent, and you'll read it and say, what have they got up? What are they mad about? And then you text something back, and then it goes, and then they ghost you. Isn't that the worst thing in the world? I didn't even know that was a term. I got ghosted. What happened? Well, you probably said something you shouldn't have said, or they understood something you said that you didn't mean, and then you have to spend an hour trying to apologize. Why don't you just use that thing to talk? That's good advice. Take it or leave it. Sometimes I carry these around. This is an index card. And sometimes a thought will come to me. And I'll write that thought down. And then I'll lay that somewhere where I'm working. Next to my bed, maybe, somewhere. And then I'll pick that thing up and read it. And then I'll lay it down again. Now, I'm just going through the process of how this sermon was built. Then I'll pick that thing up. I'm going to tell you in just a second what I wrote. But I'll put that thing down. I may leave it for a week. I may leave it for a month. But I'm thinking about that thing all the time. Now, here's what I wrote on a note card recently. When you can't figure something out and it makes no sense, then you know exactly what's happened. I'll just say it again. When you cannot figure something out logically, it makes no sense to you, then you should immediately be able to identify what's going on. Now I'm going to illustrate that to you. If you have a bad mood come over you, just all of a sudden, you wake up in a bad mood, or you come home from a bad mood, and it's not been a bad day, and you don't have any reason for being a bad mood, let me tell you where that bad mood comes from. There are spiritual forces at work in your home to try to get you in a fight with somebody. Hello? Suppose you just feel all anxious and stressed, and you just got almost panic attack, and you don't have any stressors. Now, everybody's got stressors, but you got not anything in particular bothering you that day, and all of a sudden your anxiety levels to, if we count it on a 1 to 10 scale, you get up to about an 8, and you're just going. And you look around and say, there's no reason for me to feel this way. Let me tell you, there is a reason. And he's back there in the background, trying to tear up your life. Do you see where I'm going? When you can't figure something out, then you already got it figured out. You are in a spiritual warfare. It's the devil and devils behind it, and he is out to get you. Now let me show you something. Turn to Matthew chapter 16. Now, Peter has just been bragged on as we come to verse 23. Give you a little background. Peter's just been bragged on. Jesus is asked, who do men say that I am? And Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And the Lord says in an earlier verse, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And from that time on, in verse 21, Jesus begins to tell them what's going to happen. All right, it's time. This is Matthew 16. He's going to be dead by Matthew chapter 23. So we're right now near the end. And he begins to tell them, okay, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed, and I'm going to go to the cross. And look what Peter says in verse 22. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not happen unto thee. This shall not be. And what's the Lord say? Get behind me, Satan. For you're not savoring the things of God. Now, how do you think that made Peter feel when he said that? Get behind me, Satan. My whole point is, there is a human being talking to God, And it's not the human being speaking, it is the devil using that human being to speak. So don't think that people can't be used in your life to communicate to you what the devil wants. Now, guys, I'm going to give you a little bit of advice for your health and well-being. When you get in an argument with your wife, don't say, "Get behind me, Satan." That is not going to work. You say, "Well, it's in the Bible." Yeah, but you better be careful and duck. Why don't you rather say this? When you think that the devil's influence has come in, and it may not just be you, it may be both of you, why don't you say, "Honey, why don't we just stop? I'm really confused as to what's going on now. And this thing between us is really troubling me. Why don't we just stop for a moment and have prayer?" Now, he may say, or she may say, "I'm in no mood to pray." You just leave her alone and go pray by yourself. And then you come back to that thing later, and you know what you'll discover? You'll find out that thing wasn't worth even getting bothered about, because there was some spiritual force involved in that you didn't recognize. Look at me, folks. When you can't figure something out, you know what's going on. And you need to be able to identify your reason as to what the trouble is. And that's a life lesson, to be able to identify when the devil, when the enemy is planning something against you or your family or your friendship, relationship, your church, your own life. Now, God gives us in Ephesians 6 the weapons of our warfare. That's another sermon, another lesson. I'm not going to preach about that today. I'll teach or preach about it another time. But what I want you to see is two things you must have in order if you're going to win this battle. And both these things are true in a military sense for anyone who's going to go into war against a physical enemy. Now, you're battling a spiritual enemy. He's more so, not just as, he's more so deadly than any army that's ever marched. And we take him too lightly. We dismiss him too quickly. We think the problem is another person. We think the problem's our spouse. We think the problem's our kids. The problem's our parents. The problem's my pastor. My problem is my job, my boss, wherever you want to bring this, my teacher. That's the problem. When the problem is just behind the curtain. And the problem is the devil. And it will help you in your spiritual walk if you get those eyes of discernment open and go, "Oh, I don't know what's going on here, but I know what's going on." So what do? Just like in the military, the first thing you have to do is you have to have courage. Courage. You're in a battle. You got to have courage. A person in the military who doesn't have courage is no good to anybody. They're going to run when the first firing happens. They're going to run when the first trouble meets. And so it is built into the military that you have courage. And the kind of courage you may have to have, young person, is moral courage. Moral courage. Sometimes that's the thing to win on the battlefield with Satan. You have to make tough and sometimes difficult moral decisions. They're not the kind of decisions you enjoy making, and yet you have to make them. Young people, it takes courage to break from the crowd. You know the crowd. The ones who want to serve the flesh or pop the pill or smoke the joint or drink the beer. That crowd that wants to get you into a precarious position where your morals are lowered. And that's one of the things alcohol does, according to Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk chapter 2 says the reason they want to get you intoxicated, ladies, is to get your clothes off. You say, where did you get that from? Habakkuk chapter 2. Are you aware of that? Well, you need to be aware of that. And here's a really good word that your parents have taught you from the time you grew up, and that is this little word. No. You can be polite. Let's go to this party. No, thank you. Here, would you like to have this? No, thank you. or no, get away from me. So I want to keep my friends. Okay, choose your friends wisely. But you have to have moral courage, and that takes courage to step away from the crowd and say, all right, you guys going that way, I'm going this way. And pray that God will send you a friend who will stand with you, for two are better than one. But you have to have that courage. And if you've not shown that courage in the past, then pray and ask God to forgive you, and from now on, stand strong. Stand. Having done all, stand. Stand for something. And then you have to have the courage to change. I mean, to be alive means that you're willing to change, right? Especially among Christians. We're flexible. We're not wishy-washy. We're not tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine. But you have to have the courage at times to say, you know what? I was wrong about that. And it's time for me to change my mind. That means that you're living the Christian life. You die to fear, you live to courage. You die to greed, then you live in generosity. You die to pretentiousness and you live to honesty. You die to despair and you live in hope. You die to self-doubt and you live by faith. We die to pride so that Christ might be exalted. We die to lust that love might bloom and blossom and grow. Courage to change. You know one of the hardest things for people to say? You know what? I've been wrong about that all my life. Especially when you get up here in the winter of life. You know what? I've been wrong about that all my life. You say, have you ever had to do that? Oh, absolutely I've had to do that. Do you think I've always believed what I believe now? Do you think there had to come a time when I stood up and said, I don't believe that anymore? If you've not ever said that, you've never grown in Christ the way you should grow. Because the Lord is going to hit you time and time and time again about things you are wrong about. And then you have to say, Lord, whatever it is. I was in this group. I'm not going to be part of that group anymore. I used to be part of a group, talking about me. I don't know what group you're in. But I used to be part of a group that mocked the Bible and made fun of the Bible and made fun of the King James Bible and said it was just a piece of whatever you want to call it. And I used to be in that group. See, I was in the educated group. I got an education. I just got over it. I used to be in that group. I'm not in that group anymore. You know what? I'm over here in this group that they make fun of now. And I'm okay with that. Because someday I'm going to stand before Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is going to set the record straight. But this is where I stand now, and I'm going to stand here, God willing, the rest of my life. But that's not the only thing I've changed. I've changed a lot of things about what I believe. And you know what's changed my mind? This book. This book. Now you folks are being mighty quiet today. And I don't know if that's because you're not listening and you're just tired and had a bad night last night, or I'm stomping your toes. But something's going on. And you have to be aware as I'm preaching this message, if the devil is ever at work in this congregation, it's going to be right now. Because what he'll do, the Bible tells us, Jesus Christ told the parable, as soon as the seed is sown, the devil comes along and takes it and goes, whoosh, you don't need that. And it doesn't have time to sit inside that heart and take root. You say, well, you've offended me today. Good. You need to be offended. If this kind of thing offends you and you can't figure it out, I can't figure out why that would offend you. Oh, but I know why it would offend you. Because we have an enemy that wants to make me the enemy to you, and I am not your enemy. I'm your friend. So, you have to have the courage to change. And then the second thing, and I'll be done, you have to have perseverance. You've got to hang in there. I don't know who the author is. Maybe it's anonymous, but here's how it goes. The heights of great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward through the night. Now see, there's where the problem is. Most people I know want to get to the promised land without ever going through the wilderness. Most people want medals without ever facing a battle. I mean, people want a Purple Heart without ever getting wounded. People want the Medal of Honor without ever doing anything courageous. I've read a lot about Medal of Honor winners. And every Medal of Honor winner I've read about, most of them died and gave their life to get that medal. Now, some of them didn't, but most of them did. But see, we talk about perseverance. We're talking about burning the midnight oil. We're talking about studying and putting yourself to it, the grind, the energy, the draining toil, sometimes the weariness, the difficult struggles. It doesn't happen otherwise. Our problem is we want to get to the end without ever facing the preliminaries. When Paul joined the Navy and became a Navy SEAL, it's called Hell Week. And he said, Hell Week started, and he said, Dad, we hadn't been in this thing but a few minutes. Not very long. And this guy goes and rings the bell and quits. Why did he ever start? So he could say he made it to Hell Week. And now he can say, well, I went to the Navy. It don't mean nothing unless you finish. But some people are like that, you know. They want to enroll in college just so, well, I went to college. Well, did you graduate? No, I dropped out. But I went to college. Okay. We want patience without tribulation. We want discernment without ever having to make a tough decision. We want knowledge without ever studying the Bible. We want to be able to quote the Bible without ever working on memorizing it. We want people to be saved. Now, that's true, everybody in here? You want people to get saved? Yeah, of course. We want people to get saved. And I'm not saying this about you. You may be doing very well, but we want people to get saved without ever witnessing to them. Without ever telling them the truth. Oh, we hope they get saved. Okay. You got to put some toil in that and perseverance in that. I want to see the devil flee from me. Well, you've got to resist him. And if you don't resist him, he'll never flee from you. I think about an alcoholic. An alcoholic who is successful in his battle against alcoholism has to have courage and perseverance. Perseverance is very important because they have to work every day. They've got to wake up every day and take the steps. And they have to wake up every day as if that day is a brand new day of the battle. And it doesn't matter what they've done the day before or 2 days before or 100 days before. That new day is a new battle. Could you learn from alcoholics? Because every day you get up is a new day. How many marriages could have been saved and can be saved if there's just a little perseverance? I'm not giving up if you have to drag me out the door with me hanging onto your ankle. I am not giving up. You have to kill me first. Now be careful about saying that. How many people could be won to Christ if we would just persevere and give them a tract or invite them to church or give them a phone call or send them a card and let them know we care? How many children would come back from the far country if we just did a little more? Just a little more. The two things go together, and they always do. Perseverance and courage. Now, what have I said? I'm going to review it. And I'm going to review it because the devil will come in and steal it from you. What did the preacher preach on? I don't remember. So I'm going to review it. What have I said? You are in a spiritual warfare. And you need to prepare yourself for a spiritual assault because it will be an ambush and you'll never know when it's coming. And when you can't figure something out, you have already figured it out. And in order for you, when you figure that out, you have to have courage, moral courage, and courage to change. And then you have to have perseverance in your daily life so that you will finally get to the end. And even though the odds are against you and you have no reason to hope, you are not going to quit. And if you will do that, just those two things, courage, perseverance, when that evil day comes, and you'll put on the whole armor of God, I'm not discounting that. You put on the whole armor of God, shield of faith, loins girded with truth, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, the breastplate of righteousness, praying always. If you do those things, when the devil comes, he'll meet his match because the Lord will be with you and sustain you and strengthen you. Please, please, please. The next time something comes up, will you be the first? The next time something comes up in a conversation, in a relationship, in something that's going on, something in your mind enters, and you can't figure out, where did that come from? You know where it came from. Recognize it and win the battle. And God will be pleased, and you'll be blessed.